for you. Yeah, I'm never mad at the next man doing, but
I'm just saying.
Side,
I
just want to hit the other side. Dan, we gotta go. Go ahead, Dan. Brian.
Make that.
No, real quick. Sorry, and we've seen it. You know what I'm saying? Just because you're under contract, don't mean you can't request another trade.
Yeah,
he can do that. He can do that at the week 1. I want out of here. The players got the power, guys. Like it is.
The amount of listening after this time around is like, yeah, all right, whatever. Hey, Joe Thomas on the phone. Call Joe. Joe did 15 years, All-Pro every year, Hall of Famer. Didn't win more than 5 games a year ever for 15 years. That sucks.
Dan, what's going on in the Let's go to hockey.
Well, not a whole lot. We got probably about 17, 18 games left. A lot of important games. Well, teams got themselves in the position where all these games are now important, where we've got a couple good ones tonight. We got Florida playing Toronto, which could be a preview of the playoffs coming up. I think this is the first time they played 3 times in the last 15 games, 16 games. So this will be entertaining to see if Toronto can, and Florida's shorthanded. The Chuck's out. Marchand, who they just traded for, is out.
What's my man with the PEDs?
Barkov, or not
Barkov. No. Barkov.
Shit. I could say Eklund, yeah.
Yeah.
So, the Chuck's still out. But, these games are going to, especially the way they got the playoff format, a lot of this stuff's going to matter. Like, you got Columbus, they're hanging on to the last spot in the playoff push for the wild card. And you got Montreal, the Rangers, Detroit, even Boston. They're all within 2 points of being in that playoff. At least you picked the good 3-letter network and not the 4. The best stuff for hockey is right on that page he has pulled up. But that's going to be a tight race down to the end. Who gets those last 2 playoff spots? And right now, Ottawa's beating Boston 5-3. Tampa's losing to Philly, which the Atlantic is going to be the division in the East that's going to be a bear. Because the way they do this, the top team in the division gets to play a wild card. Right. And then second and third have to play each other. So the way it sits now, Florida would get probably the worst wild card. Or no, they would get Ottawa, and Washington would get Columbus because Washington has the best record. And then Toronto would have to play Tampa Bay, and Carolina would have to play New Jersey. So Washington, if it stays the way it is at the end of the year, Washington has probably the easier route to get through the gauntlet, just because we'll get into the trades here in a minute of what happened with Carolina and Jersey. But
so my Rangers on the outside looking in right now?
Oh, yeah.
Way outside.
No, they're 2 points out.
Yeah.
But the way they're playing,
they're not going to make
it. Yeah, Columbus kicked their Bucks the other night. So.
Yeah, they're losers of the last 4. They're 4. Yeah.
But Florida's up 3-1 on Toronto right now, and then Columbus, like we talked about, it's holding on that last spot. They're down 3-0 to Vegas, and the Devils and Edmonton are 1-1, and your Rangers and the Wild are scoreless after 1. And then the Capitals play the Kings later, and then Chicago and San Jose, which that game doesn't matter. They were both way, way, way at the bottom. But there was a lot of interesting trades and stuff that went on throughout the trade deadline. And the interesting thing to me was you had some couple early trades, the bigger trades, but then you also had, what was kind of inquisitive to me was, so Washington has the best record in the East. They made one trade. They trade for Bolivier for the Penguins. That's the only move they made. So it's like, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Vegas. Now, Mark Stone didn't make it on LTIR before the trade deadline. He's still healthy. He's still playing. So they really couldn't do a whole lot. You know how they like to hide the money before trade deadline. But all they did was brought back Riley Smith that they let go 2 years ago. So like Vegas is one of the top teams in the East. So they really didn't do a whole lot. But like if we get in like team wise, so like Florida, they're the top in the Atlantic. So what they do, they traded with Boston for Brad Marchand, and they gave up a conditional second round pick from him. Then they got Nico Sturm and a 7th round pick in 27 for just a draft pick to San Jose. And then they picked up Vitek Vanasek, the goalie from San Jose. And that was because prior to the deadline on the 2nd, they made their big trade where they got Seth Jones from Chicago and a 26 4th round pick for the goalie Spencer Knight and a conditional pick. So they kind of shipped out Spencer Knight, brought in Vanek to kind of take his place as the backup. But they brought in probably one of the best face-off guys in the NHL in Sturm. And then how this happened, but Brad Marchand is now a Florida Panther. And just to put that in perspective, you got when they're healthy, and hopefully they can get healthy before the playoffs, but you would have Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, and Brad Marchand
On the same line.
on the same line. That there's no line in the history in the NHL that's rowdier than that line ever.
Is Matthew gonna be ready for the playoffs? I don't get a bad groin.
Yeah, that's well, let's put it this way: he might not be ready, but he's going to try to go. That he's if he can, he's going to play. That's just
Didn't he play in a cup finals against Vegas the other year with like a
broken sternum? Yeah,
broken sternum, something like that.
Yeah. So
now, do you think like the Panthers are upset that he got hurt in the meaningless All-Star game?
no, because here's the thing: like the culture of hockey.
Yeah,
it like forget pro sports. Just turn on Shoresy. That's on Hulu, and watch that and see how the players talk. And the owners talk to the players. That's kind of the culture of hockey. It's always it's community, it's all that. Gotcha. So they don't play for the name on the back. They play for the crest that's on the jersey. And the highest honor that any of these guys play for is playing for their country. So Canadian, United States, Sweden, Finland, Russia, whatever. That's the biggest thing that like they hadn't done this in like 9 years. So they were like those exhibition games were better than any regular season game in that time, and probably a lot of the playoff games that were that throughout that time. Like not the like when you get to the finals, but early playoff rounds, there's more intensity in an exhibition game than you would see in a first round playoff game. And that's kind of you could tell this was NHL run because they were allowed to fight, but they could do the things that they would normally do in a playoff series. So that first game against Canada, everybody's like, oh, they scripted these fights. No, they didn't. The guy on the other side can say no, and nothing happens. But when someone asks you to go, hey, I'm going to stick up for my team. I'm going to stick up for my country. Yeah, let's go. So all that gets the intensity up, the whole 9 yards. But they set that game up because they knew they were going to play them in the finals. They knew that's the team they were going to have to play. So just like in a playoff series, early playoff, you'll see some of that garbage go on. But that's the setup if there's a game 7 to wear the other team down to tell them, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to take your crap. So you know what's coming. And it's a pride thing. Like that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure we're here. Gotcha. And that's why they do that.
Hey,
and that's why that game happened.
Dan, I got a quick question, and I don't. So, not going into politics, but just say for kicks and giggles that there was no Ukrainian, Russian thing happening, and what other teams could have been in this kind of round robin tournament that we didn't see this time. Meaning it's like there might have been a Russian team there, and how do you think that would have changed the tournament overall?
Oh, obviously, if they could have had more teams. So I just happen to have the hypothetical Team Russia
Okay.
that I saw. So
Ovechkin.
oh no, this team. When I saw this on paper or this image, I was like, oh my god, Panarin, Malkin, Kucherov on your first line,
Oh.
Kaprizov, Buchnevich from St. Louis, Svechnikov from Carolina, second line, Ovechkin, Barbashev, and Valery Nichushkin from Colorado, your third line. Michov from Philly, Namesakov from Winnipeg, and Marchenko from Columbus. That's your fourth line.
That's what I was thinking. It would have turned the tournament into something totally different.
So it gets better. So on defense, you got Sergachev and Orlov, Romanov and Kulikov, Vladislav Garakov from L.A., and Artem Zub from Ottawa. And then you got Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, and Bobrovsky as your three goaltenders.
Wow.
So to answer your question, yes, if Russia wasn't in the middle, like, so they're banned from the IIHF from international play right now.
Right.
So they probably won't be in the Olympics next year.
Right.
Unless something changes.
Right.
But that team right there, oh my God. Like, poof. There would have been a good chance if they had, say, Russia and, say, one other team. It might have been Russia that was playing for the gold medal.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. Like, hockey's a global sport. Like, you got
yeah,
Russians, Ukrainians, Europeans. I mean, there's people from everywhere. Like the Obama, that plays for the Penguins right now. I'm trying to think where he's from. But yeah, it's like it might be like where you have to use like a certain continent to make up a team where it's not, like
right.
a very hot region that doesn't play, like Jamaican bobsled team. We all remember that movie. But like, you may need
cool run-ins.
Yeah, cool runs. You might need to, combine like a, China, Korean South area, something like that. But that being said, yeah, like if they would have had a couple more players or teams in that tournament, yeah, like especially that Russian team, that would have been awesome.
That's what I thought. I just wasn't 100% sure of what the makeup of the team would be if they were allowed to, participate. So hopefully next year we won't have many wars and we can, get some things going on. So that's all.
Yeah. So we'll have the Olympics next year. So it'll be best on best, but at a grander scale.
Right.
This was something that the NHL wanted to do to, one, give the players something to whet their appetite for the Olympics next year, that kind of thing. And to, obviously, they're not, as much as Bettman gets booed and everybody hates him, blah, blah, blah. He's done a lot of great things to expand the league, and his, vision and knowing that the All-Star weekend, game itself is kind of BS. Like everybody loves the skill challenges, but nobody wants to watch the games.
Right.
Said, hey, let's forgo all that. Let's get the people looking ahead to the Olympics. Let's do this kind of tournament. And to be honest, none of them knew that this was going to be what it turned out to be.
Right. Well,
they thought maybe they'll go half speed. At least it'll be better than the All-Star game. Blah blah blah. Hell no. There was only one game that was a blowout, and that was USA's first game. Every other game, I think, was within a goal or two, and overtimes in multiple games.
Right.
So, yeah, that whole tournament, got them a lot of eyeballs.
Sounds promising.
Yep.
What's up with the OVU watch?
He's on 9, which was crazy. Is they scored a touchdown yesterday, I think it was.
Yeah.
And he had here's the thing I saw at the end, that he got the puck on his defensive zone right by his blue line. He could have shot the puck the whole length of from the blue line over the red line over the other blue line, but he hit the young kid at center ice who had 2 goals, and he buried it for his first career hat trick.
There you go.
So that that tells you he's like, he knows he's going to get the record eventually, but he's a team player and he knows, hey, this kid could be this kid's first hat trick. Let me give him the puck.
Team.
So,
teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah. So
Facts.
that's kind of how it works. It'll come when it's supposed to come, but if you play the right way,
it definitely
things will work out. But there's a couple other interesting trades, like just looking at playoff teams that actually matter. Like, you know what I mean? Like the wild card stuff, because that could be, there's some teams in both, like 3 or 4 in each division that could easily overtake them. So like to go through all of them would be just way too much time. But like Edmonton Edmonton made the finals last year, lost to Florida, Game 7. What'd they do to get better? Well, they picked up Jake Wallman from San Jose, defenseman, for Berglund and a pick. And then they traded with Boston. And they picked up Trent Frederick, the center, and Max Jones, another forward. Those were 2 guys that were playing, I believe, at the NHL level. And a Peter Hauser for Max Warner and a couple of picks. They get bigger, they get tougher. And, like both Frederick and Jones are big boys. But I actually did get to see Wallman's first game with Edmonton, and they were playing Dallas. And he absolutely blew up, ranting in at the blue line with a clean check. Perfectly legal clean check. But I think he'll help them out on the back end. That's part of the problem. Having consistent goaltending is their other issue. So, I think Frederick still, he's out still with an injury. Like, that's the crazy thing with some of these trades. There's a lot of these players that are on the mend,
right?
And they're going to come back. So we'll see how they can get the chemistry going once they do get their chance to play. So, like I said, Vegas, they got Smith, and then you got Edmonton here with Wallman, Frederick, and Jones, and then the other one, the Kings in their division. They picked up Andrei Kuzmenko from Philly, and that's really it.
So if the timing's right, you might have some juggernauts if the timing's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's, can you sustain what you're doing with the players you got, or when you get the players that you traded for, can you incorporate them back in and not disrupt what, if you're having, that's like Washington Edmonton really didn't change a whole lot because the vibes and all that's, going great. And you don't want to tinker sometimes with that and then have it turn out that, that you mess it up.
Yeah.
And you go into a little bit of a funk, lose a couple games or 3-4 games in a row. And then next thing you know, you can't win the division. And now you got to play Tampa Bay first round.
Coaching matters.
Yeah. So, like, speaking, Toronto, they did some interesting things here. They picked up Scotty Lawton, the center from Philly, for Rabenkin, the right wing, and a pick. And they got a couple picks back. And then they picked up Brandon Carlo from Boston, the defenseman. So they got one of the best 2-way centers and a good defenseman now. And then they gave up Fraser Minton, I guess, is one of Toronto's top prospects going back to Boston. So Boston getting younger, getting talent, getting a couple picks there. And then this trade, I believe, was just so they could make these guys fit under the cap. So they sent Dewar and Timmins to Pittsburgh for a 5th-round pick in 2025. That's it. So that was more of, hey, we need to make some room money-wise so we can get Carlo and Lawton on the roster. So they went back to their good friend Cal Dubas and it gave him a couple players for a pick. And then, like I said, we did Florida and then like Tampa. Tampa really didn't do a whole lot either. So they traded Eisenmont to Seattle a 25 second, 26 first rounder, and a 27 first rounder. And they got Borkstrand and Yanni Gord, and they got a 26 fifth round pick. But they got two guys like Gord used to play in Tampa when those championship years. Good defensive center. Borkstrand is a big dude, good hard checker, can get you some points. And that's all they did. You know, like just fill in a couple spots, getting some depth players, you know, in case of injury. And that's really all they needed to do to kind of shore up their lineup because, you know, you got Vasilevsky back there and Hedman and Kucherov, Braden Point, you know, so they just need to get not the top six, but the third and fourth line, kind of solid those up. And then Winnipeg, they really didn't do a whole lot either. You know, they're the leading team in the West.
Right.
Their big trade was they picked up Brandon Tanev from Seattle, which he's just a menace. Like he plays 100 miles an hour. That's why they call him Turbo. He plays 100 miles an hour, and he's always after the puck. And then me and Kevin talked about this. I was like, oh, hey, we got Luke Shen from Nashville. Yeah, for an hour. And then they turn around, the Penguins turn around and send him to Winnipeg for 2 picks in 26 and 27. So Winnipeg shored up their, you know, got an extra D because you always need extras when you get to the playoffs because there's going to be injuries. But they got it, you know, Tanev and Shen. So they, you know, a couple moves, not a whole lot. You know, they did what they needed to do. And even like New Jersey, they really didn't do a whole lot. They picked up Daniel Sprong for a 7th round pick in 26 from Seattle. They got Cheslowski from the Islanders, and they got Cody Glass and Jonathan Gruden from the Penguins. Their biggest thing is Jack Hughes is out. You know, their top scorer, top playmaker. I saw where he got tangled with Eichel and went awkwardly into the end boards. I believe he messed his shoulder up, had to have surgery, so he's done until next year, so he won't be back. And they picked up Brian Dumoulin earlier, so as a defenseman. So that's why I said, like, I think Washington might have a little easier route here. But once they if they beat the wild card team, then they get to play the winner of Carolina and Jersey. And I kind of saved this one more towards last because it's a multiple linguo trade. So Carolina, what do? They go, hey, we got this guy on our team, Martin Necas. He's doing really great. But let's call Colorado and see if we can pick up Mikko Rantanen. Colorado says, you know what? We can't sign this guy. He won't sign, and he wants a whole bunch of money. And I don't know that we can spend all that money because we got other players we're gonna have to play. So we got to figure out, you know, or pay what's the pecking order, who's getting paid. So I saw this on YouTube. I think it's Carolina Corner, but I think it's like a podcast that the Carolina Hurricanes have. And Rod Brennamore was on there and did an interview with the dude. So this was all done behind back door. So Carolina says, hey, we want Rantanen. We'll give you Drury and we'll give you Martin Necas. We'll give you a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick, you know, for Mikko Rantanen. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Well, can we negotiate with Mikko? And they're like, no. You can do that when he gets there. So they can't negotiate it because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year where he can go wherever he wants. So he gets to Carolina and he tells them, I will only play for 4 teams and you're not one of them.
Yeah.
So, and that's come from what Brendamore said. So they made this trade blindly, not knowing that they couldn't re-sign him, or they thought that, you know, the GM thought, well, if we get him here, we can sign him. So that's what they gave up. So then they know they're not going to be able to sign him. He's going to be gone at the end of the year. So you got a choice. Do you keep him and play them throughout the rest of the year, playoffs, and hope you can get to the cup final and win, and then lose them for nothing at the end of the offseason? Or do you move them before the deadline? So, so they decide they're going to move him. Well, before mentioned, he only got to play for a couple teams that he told them. So for them to have to move him to like 4 possible teams within like less than 24 hours, yeah, not very good. But they end up trading him to Dallas, and they got Stankoven, the young center for them. They got a conditional 26th first, a conditional 28th first, a 26th third rounder, and a 27th third rounder. But still out the door is Drury, Natchez, now Rantanen. So they basically got Stankoven and picks for those 3 players. So that I don't know. I don't think that was the best move by their GM. Like, if you don't know if you can sign the guy or not, that's an awful big leap when you're giving up that kind of equity going the other way.
Yeah.
But I mean, but they did get Taylor Hall out of that, so they still have Taylor Hall, and then they picked up what was the guy's Jankowski from Nashville. So that's why I say, like, New Jersey, they're the best players out for the rest of the season. They brought in some workman type, blue collar type players to their team. Carolina, we just talked about what they just shipped out the door, and basically for Stankoven, which I like Stankoven. I liked him when I saw him play for Dallas. He's a hustle player. He's a good player, fast. But so that's kind of like Carolina's blunder. And the way I look at this too is they got Getzel last year at the deadline, sending Bunning to Pittsburgh. Well, he didn't end up re-signing there either.
So it's just sometimes just to calculate it.
It's a risk. It's,
calculated with, yeah.
It like I said, do you keep them and play the rest of the season out in playoffs, or do you just let them go for nothing?
Well, we talked earlier about value for players and stuff like that, and like I said, it's a risk, and if you're going for it, I guess you're going for it. So,
and to be fair, let me do say this about Rantanen. I don't believe it was the organization or anything like that is why he didn't want to be there. I think it was more of his family in the East Coast and being in that area on the East. I think he wanted to be on the Western side of the states. But what are you going to do? You got to make a decision. You got to try. But like now Rantanen's on Dallas, and he also picked up Cody Ceci, the defenseman, and Michael Granlund from San Jose for a pick. So now Dallas is looking pretty good because there's a possibility Heiskanen can be back by the playoffs. Who's the other one that's sitting out for them that's hurt? The forward. It's escaping me. Tyler Sagan. They get Sagan back, Hastening back. Now you got Rantanen, and you got, they got a real good looking squad going into the playoffs. And then the last one, for me would be Colorado. I think Colorado did a pretty good job this trade deadline because they filled a bunch of needs of what they need going forward to possibly win a cup. They got Natchez in there, who's been playing really good. They got a good player in Drury. It's a third, fourth line center. And, they gave her up Rantanen, who wasn't probably going to sign there anyway because he wanted way too much money. But then they did make a trade with your Rangers for with Calvin DeHaan and Passanen. So they, and they got out, the Rangers, that's who they got. And then Lindgren and Vesey, who's he's a good player, came to Colorado. But then they turned around and traded with the Islanders and got Brock Nelson. And then they also traded with Boston and got Charlie Coyle and they were to ship out Casey Middlestead, which they were kind of like he just wasn't fitting in there, to say that. And then they picked up Eric Johnson, brought him back as an extra defenseman for the playoff run. So I really like what Colorado's got going on. Like they're strong down the middle, all four lines. They got depth. You know, Lindgren, as you well know, will do anything to win. He will put his face in front of a puck. So but tell me I'm wrong. That dude would do anything.
Are the Avs your favorite?
That face in front of the puck stuff. That's.
Hey, but you know what? They go get stitched up, put a bubble on, and they come right back out and play.
That's a fact. It's a rough game.
So I really like the West is going to be a little bit scary between Dallas and the Avs,
right?
And I don't know. As long as you have McDavid and Draisaitl,
oh McJesus!
I mean, you can't count them out outscoring everybody.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I don't trust their goaltending. So, like, probably Colorado and Dallas. I mean, even Winnipeg, because they got the best goalie on the planet right now, and Hellebuck. You know, so like that Central Division out of the West is, I think, the scariest three teams. But here's the kicker: if you look at the standings right now and how that plays out, like we did the East, Winnipeg's number one, so they get one of the wild card teams. Dallas and Colorado would have to play each other, and then Vegas would get the other wild card, and Edmonton would have to play LA. So that's why I say this shenanigans of the way they got the playoffs, building rivalries, having to play within your division, conference, whatever, is BS. Because if it was probably by record, these guys wouldn't see each other until the semi or the the conference final,
right?
Where you're knocking out better teams early because of the way it's set up.
Good on good.
Yeah. But then, like Florida's going to get like Columbus or Ottawa, and Washington will get one of those two. But then Carolina will have to play Jersey, and Tampa will have to play Toronto. And then you go from that, and whoever like Florida wins, then they'll get the winner of Toronto and Tampa. That's why I say I think Washington got the little easier street on the east side, just because injuries and stuff like that with Carolina and New Jersey. And then on, the West is going to be a battle.
And there's what you said earlier, there was like 13.
There's like 15 or like 17 games. So most teams have played like 64 games. So that's 18 games?
Yeah, 18 left. Yeah.
So anywhere between 18 and 15.
Gotcha.
And that's the thing with the Rangers. They played 65 games. The two wildcard teams have only played 64. So they got a game in hand. But you are up 1-0 on Minnesota.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, whatever. Anything else? You trolling person?
Well, no, like just like the last thing, so we were talking. Some teams, will be buyers. Some teams will be sellers. Like some of these teams got players to make them better in the playoffs. Well, now Boston is kind of in a situation where we had our good run, and with that, eventually it runs out. Like Bergeron retired and that kind of thing. Chara retired, blah, blah, blah. So now what do you got to do? Well, what did they do? They moved a guy out in Carlo, not super old, but, got good prospects from Toronto. Then they send Marchand to Florida. Even though he's a UFA at the end of the year, can sign right back with Boston next year. They still got a second-round pick out of him. But then, they got Casey Middlestead in the Colorado trade when they sent out an older player in Charlie Coyle. And then they got Kushtanov. These Russian names are wow. but they sent out Brazo to Minnesota and got, that and a pick back. And then, like I said, they sent out Frederick and Jones, and they got a couple picks. So their thing is the way we stand now and the injuries that we got, like their top 3 defensemen, I believe, are out. Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy, who also got hurt in the Four Nations tournament, and Marchand and Frederick. So they were in the position of, let's move some of the older vets off the roster, keep the young core, get picks, get some young players and prospects, and try to do what Washington did this year after missing the playoffs or squeaking into the playoffs, is to like rebuild on the fly so that next year they don't lose a lot. Because you figure they still got Swayman in net. They still got one of the best goalies in the league. And, they get the players back from injury. They're going to be, they're still only 2 points out of a playoff spot. But, that's kind of like your seller's mentality is like, people are wanting these players, older players, veteran players. Let's expiring contracts. Let's move them and, evaluate over the summer and see who we're going to go after to rebuild. So we'll see how Boston looks next year. Are they in the running or are they in the same position? Because then, you'll be able to tell a little bit how,
right,
their philosophy is of, do we try to get better right away, or are we going to wait a couple years? Because like Yzerman's been on the 6-year plan in Detroit, and like they're starting to play better now, and they're in a spot where they're close to being in a playoff position. They're one of those teams that's like 2 points behind.
So Yzerman is the general manager for the Wings, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else, Dan?
No, that's the tilt of the week. It's not the greatest fight. I'll give it that. But
to the week,
Toronto and Utah played the other night, and I missed the goal. It was some freaky goal, and they gave it to Benoit, the defenseman for Toronto. They dropped the puck, and I don't know why it happened, but Kesslering went up to him, and they squared off. And the dude did like a Superman punch.
Superman, I saw that.
Literally, he was probably like that far off the ice. He jumped in skates and tried to punch him. Of course, he missed him. And then he ate about 4 lefts or 4 rights in a row, and then they fell down. But it like the last time I saw that was Kevin Bieksa when he played, I believe, in Vancouver, and he actually it actually worked. He clocked the dude. But that was my tilt of the week. I thought that one was a pretty good one, funny one, because I hadn't seen that in forever. But then the other Lackey sent me a couple memes. It was Washington, Seattle, and all 5 players for both teams were in the penalty box. Like the guys couldn't sit. Some of them had to stand because there wasn't enough room.
Sound like a New York City subway.
Yeah, they let the lady sit.
Not in New York.
Not in New York.
Hey, would they be on the train like this? Sleep.
Oh yeah, as soon as that pregnant lady stand in front of me.
God. Oh my God.
Anybody from New York know what we talking about?
Damn New Yorkers.
Yo, he's Dan K. He's a hockey too.
And Ovi's 9 away?
9 away. Ovi's 9 away.
But they hadn't started yet. They're 10:30 game against LA tonight.
Okay. Gotcha, man. Gotcha.
I saw one play. He could have scored on an empty net, but he gave it to somebody else to score.
Yeah, that kid.
That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
I think that's one of their rookies on their team.
Yeah.
But that was his first career hat trick.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it was a hat trick.
So he knew he had 2.
Yeah.
And he passed it up to him.
Yeah, I think when you got booty, Ryan, that's what Dan was alluding to.
You brought that up. My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it was Pistorius, or let me look at his name real quick.
What a teammate.
Yeah,
but that's the way they are. Though. Like he knew that dude, he was that close to having a hat trick, his first one, and that's what you'll see. Like even like when young kids come up or whatever, and they actually score their first goal. You'll see how aware these guys are of that, because he may be over in the corner jumping in the glass, celebrating. One of the vets is going over, digging the puck out of the net because they know that's his first goal. Skate over, give it to the trainer, go, hey, put the tape around it, write on it, first goal, blah blah blah.
That's cool.
But what's his last name? Protus, Alexei Protus. That's who he gave the puck up to.
That's real cool.
I got you. Thank you, Dan. Ryan, the NBA.